In the wake of the budget, of course, always a few different measures, including in immigration. At the moment, we're essentially not importing any residents. Perhaps we can, though, from New Zealand. Joining me live now is Immigration Minister Alex Hawke. So you want to make it easier for Kiwis to get residency. Is this basically the only way to try to get some immigration going at the moment?
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom. We do have a special bilateral relationship with New Zealand, as you know, and any one time we've got about 700,000 Kiwis in Australia. These actually were negotiated pre-COVID, these changes I'm making, but obviously it's a very timely measure to allow and recognise people who've been stuck in New Zealand or been stuck here or haven't met the income threshold during the residency period that would normally apply. So throughout COVID, the government's making a series of measures to make sure people are treated fairly and equitably as we go through this, and Kiwis are no different.
Does this, in part, clear up that big issue we keep hearing about, that when Kiwis are here and they fall on hard times, they can't get the dole and other welfare, if they're residents, they'll be able to?
No, obviously we give a range of benefits and services to Kiwi citizens who are here in Australia, but this is about skilled independent visas, 189s. This is about making sure that instead of 4 years ordinarily resident in Australia out of 5, you'll only need 3 years out of 5 to be resident in Australia. So it's relaxing it. It means more people can acquire Australian permanent residency and then ultimately citizenship over time. But, you know, the leaders, Jacinda Ardern and Prime Minister Morrison, are meeting shortly. They'll have more to say about further discussions and bilateral relations.
Is that to do with that welfare issue that always gets brought up, or not?
Well, we constantly look at the arrangements between Australia and New Zealand.
But we constantly say no to that, don't we?
Well, look, we've done pretty well. We've got a travel bubble there with New Zealand. We've got good relations. Over time, we're working through all of the conditions and ways of progressing it. And there is a review due by 2022 of pathways to permanent residency for New Zealand citizens, and that will produce more change.
But are we expecting an announcement on that welfare issue or not?
Well, that will be a matter for the leaders to continue to discuss, but obviously
nothing's in the pipeline, but they might agree on something.
Well, they always have these discussions, and there's constant issues between us, but we do have 700,000 Kiwis in Australia, so there's a lot to consider. 485
visas, these are the ones international students are on with a right to work. We've spoken about this a couple of times. You said a decision was going to be close. I'll just clarify for our viewers. So these are people that are stuck overseas, can't get back to Australia, but that right to work visa, which is limited in time, is expiring. It's ticking down.
Yes.
Is there a decision on this yet?
No, there isn't a decision on this, Tom. I know you have raised this. You've been an advocate for this, so I appreciate that. There are a lot of people stuck overseas on a lot of different visas at the moment. It's a difficult situation. We've got some spouse visas that are sitting offshore. We've got people in the refugee humanitarian program that we've allocated places to, can't move.
And these seem to be the only visas that are ticking down, that are finite. So the other issues we get, they can't get here. When they can get here, they'll be here. For these people, they might expire with them never being able to use them.
No, that's right. And we have made announcements in the past about rolling over visas or offering people an extension, without penalty.
Freezing them, whatever it might be.
And we'll consider that. And when we're ready to announce that, we will.
How is it still, I mean, this is more than a year. They're going to give up, aren't they, or tell their friends don't go to Australia to study?
Well, there's a lot of difficulties at the moment. We have enabled offshore study, as you know, so people can study at Australian education institutions offshore. A lot of people are doing that. You'll see them virtually in rooms here in Australia, in lecture rooms and tutorial rooms that people are studying. We want to expand that to make sure people can study offshore, but at the moment, very difficult to move people. But I hear what you're saying.
When will they have an answer?
Well, they'll have an answer when we're ready to give one, but we have to work through a lot of issues in immigration, and this is one of them. Well, conceivably, we'll have to work through within recognising the situation with
It's a long time.
It is, but, COVID is continuing. I mean, in the subcontinent at the moment, as you know, we have a very deadly strain, a genuine humanitarian crisis, and that was unexpected as well. So.
Okay. So just interesting as well, when you look at the budget, international students, essentially, the timeline for them coming back end of this year, for international borders overall, it's the middle of next year. So there is seemingly a priority on them, a recognition the sector desperately needs them.
We've always said that international students are an important priority from the federal government's perspective. We work with the states to get our quarantine arrangements in place. We'll keep doing that. Obviously, the vaccination rollout is the top priority for the government at the moment, to make sure all Australians are vaccinated, and then we can safely bring people
But that would be separate, right? Would be getting them in some form of quarantine before we're opening our borders as a priority.
That's right. But the issues are the same: safe planes, safe quarantines, and when we have, a high risk assessment in India via medical advice, and we have a very serious situation spreading through the subcontinent, and with lots of people dying and Australia out of control, it is difficult to make those decisions.
Just finally, a new law also passed recently. So when you've cancelled someone's visa, but they can't go home or be sent home because they would face persecution, they can now be detained indefinitely. So that forces someone to either be locked up or face persecution.
Yeah, but I want to make this clear. So this is only about a very small cohort, a particular cohort of people. So we're talking about less than 50 people in this cohort.
At the moment?
And in the foreseeable future, this is about that cohort only. And what we had to do to legislate here, and this was agreed to by the entire Parliament, a series of judicial decisions meant that the courts were in essence ordering us to refoul people who were in our immigration detention. But if someone is in this cohort and in immigration detention, they're there for a good reason, and they may have had an adverse security assessment, a current adverse security assessment. They could be guilty of a very serious crime. We're talking about either hardened criminals or we're talking about serious security risks assessed by security agencies. We're not talking about general refugees or humanitarian entries.
Are we talking about character assessments as well?
We are, yes.
So they could have just failed a character test?
Well, no. So these are either, I'll make this very clear, so that, because I know the Greens have been sending some strange signals about this, but this is either very serious criminals of the most serious categories of crime, convicted, with serious sentences, or people with adverse security assessments.
But can you simply say character test failed and you can apply to this as Minister?
No, all of this cohort are hardened criminals who've been convicted, or they are the subject of a security
you can't simply do it on character assessment?
No, this won't be just used casually, no.
Okay. Alex Hawke, appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Tom.